Out front now, Ryan Goodman, former special counsel at the Department of Defense, and Stephanie Grisham, former Trump White House press secretary. Stephanie, just first to you, what do you think about the former president posting, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you," and then this being followed by a campaign ad that identifies the prosecutors in these cases?
Well, I think it's chilling. Legally, it doesn't seem like it's very smart. But how is that not intimidation? And what other people are going to take a message from that? As we've seen and heard, people really believe that Donald Trump sent them to the Capitol. And people really felt like, hours later, when he said to stop, they listened. And so I just don't understand. Does somebody have to get hurt before people take this kind of online intimidation seriously? The people, and I know he's pointing out the prosecutors, but as somebody who gets death threats every other day, it makes me nervous. It should make anybody who's ever spoken out against him nervous, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah, I think, Ryan, that's the point. At what point is that issue dealt with? You have the New York DA reporting threats after Trump tweeted about him. You have DA Fani Willis in Georgia showing us the threats that she and her staff are getting. At what point does this behavior become a legal liability for Trump? At what point does the court deal with this?
It's a great question. The court could step in actually right away to at least warn the former president that if he persists in these kinds of statements, that it will get him into even greater legal jeopardy. And then I think there are at least two trigger points in a certain sense for him. One is he could be subject to a gag order by one or more of the judges in which they say you may no longer speak publicly about the case and about the prosecutors and the like at all. Full stop, because you've violated the guardrails that we've set up for you. And then second, there are criminal penalties. And indeed, at the arraignment yesterday, the judge said specifically to former President Trump, there are criminal laws that you should not violate, including intimidating witnesses. There is another law that says you also shall do nothing to corruptly influence or intimidate through the use of force or not through the use of force U.S. attorneys. There's this very specific criminal statute for that would apply directly to somebody like him. And admittedly, I think today's statement by him is ambiguous. But at the same time, I don't think it is ambiguous to some of his more violent supporters. And you can only imagine that some of these prosecutors will have to increase their security detail because this kind of rhetoric leads to death threats, increased death threats against them. And that's part of the legal test as well. Does it put an individual in reasonable fear of their safety? Anybody can imagine being one of those prosecutors. I think you'd be worried to a greater degree about your safety after statements like these.
It only takes one person, and we've seen some of this before. Stephanie, you see Trump calling now on the Supreme Court to intercede in his trial. He is, of course, very proud of appointing 3 of the 9 judges who currently sit on the court. Let's take a look at that.
Oh, look at our judges. We've got already 3 great justices. 3 great Supreme Court justices. That's a lot.
Stephanie, do you think he really thinks the court will help him, or do you think he is just sending a message to his supporters?
I think it's both. I think that he knows intelligently that they cannot do anything when there has not even been a trial yet. But I also believe he believes these people owe him. He thinks anybody who he's given a starburst to owes him. So let alone putting them on the Supreme Court. So I think that he's trying to telegraph a message to them in some way, saying, stand by, you're going to owe me here. And if this trial doesn't go my way, I expect you to step in. But it's also just to send a message, as you just said, to his supporters that, he's the victim and he needs people to step up and stand up for him.
Ryan, can the Supreme Court somehow slow this down, stop this in any way that Trump might want to see?
There is one conceivable scenario that I can think of, which is I imagine his lawyers will try anything they can to raise questions that could be appealed to the Supreme Court before the trial, to put off the trial. One of those questions might be, is there constitutional immunity because the actions he took were while he was president? I think it's a bad argument and it's a losing argument, but that doesn't stop them from trying it, though I do think it would be dispatched with very quickly within the D.C. circuit and then maybe could get to the court. So I can imagine that's also what he is, exactly as Stephanie said, trying to signal that when an issue like that does get to the court, he thinks they owe him in a certain sense that I think, if anything, it might make them more reluctant to rule in his favor because they want to show their independence. So it's not, I think it's also in some sense a self-defeating strategy on his part.
We've seen the court at many times take that sense of independence very seriously. Ryan Goodman, Stephanie Grisham, thank you so much to both of you this evening.